I didn't know my wife had stopped loving me until I heard her sign my life away while I lay blind in a hospital bed. The pen scratched against paper 3 times, sharp and steady. And for a moment, I thought Madison was approving another surgery, another scan, another chance for the doctors to save what was left of my sight. I was wrong. The room smelled like antiseptic, warm plastic, and rain-soaked wool from the coat she refused to take off. Somewhere above me, a monitor kept counting my heartbeats like it was the only thing in that room still on my side. Beep, beep, beep. My eyes were wrapped in thick white bandages, so tight I could feel my own pulse behind them. I couldn't see the ceiling, couldn't see the 4 taped to my hand, couldn't see the woman I had been married to for 12 years standing close enough to touch and still feeling miles away. Madison, I said, my voice dry from the tube they'd pulled out of my throat that morning. What are you signing? She didn't answer right away. That was the first cut. Before the accident, Madison filled silence like she was afraid of it. She talked through dinner, through commercials, through long drives on I-5 when the Portland rain blurred the windshield. But now the silence sat between us like a locked door. I heard her shift her weight. Heels on tile. Expensive ones. The kind she wore when she wanted people to know she belonged in rooms with glass walls, catered lunches, and men who measured worth in square footage. Just paperwork, she said. Too smooth. Too clean. A voice like polished marble. I tried to lift my head, but pain moved through me in a slow white wave. My ribs tightened. My left shoulder burned. My face felt swollen and foreign, like it belonged to someone else. 3 nights earlier, I had been Ethan Walker, 41 years old, audio engineer, husband, homeowner, the guy who fixed loose cabinet hinges on Sunday mornings and still remembered how Madison liked her coffee. 2 sugars. No cream. Now I was a patient in room 417 with a fractured collarbone, damaged optic nerves, and a doctor who kept using careful words like uncertain, complicated, and time will tell. Time will tell. People say that, when the truth is too ugly to say out loud. Is Dr. Patel here? I asked. No, another pause. Paper slid into a folder. This isn't about the surgery. My fingers curled around the hospital sheet. The cotton felt thin, almost paper-like. Then what is it about? Madison exhaled, not sad, not shaken, just tired. Like I was a meeting that had run too long. Then she leaned close enough that I caught her perfume, jasmine, and something cold underneath, and whispered, You're not my husband anymore, Ethan. You're a burden. The monitor kept beeping, but everything inside me went silent. I waited for her to take it back. I waited for the nervous laugh, the apology, the crack in her voice that would prove she was scared and saying things she didn't mean. Nothing came. Just the soft click of her purse closing. Just the whisper of fabric as she stepped away from my bed. Madison, I said, and hated how small my voice sounded. The door opened. Hallway noise spilled in, nurses, wheels, distant voices, a cart rattling somewhere down the corridor. Then I heard another sound. A man clearing his throat outside my room. Low. Familiar. Tyler Grant. Her old college friend. The one she said was helping her with a luxury listing downtown. The one who laughed too loudly at our kitchen table and called me the sound guy, like my life was a hobby. Madison's heels moved toward him. The door began to close. Before it did, I heard Tyler murmur, You did the right thing. And Madison, my wife, said, He's finished anyway. The latch clicked. Darkness stayed. But something in me opened its eyes. Before the accident, my life had never looked impressive from a distance, but it had been solid enough to stand on. I was 41 years old, born in Salem, Oregon, raised by a father who believed a man's name was only as good as the promises attached to it. By the time I met Madison, I had already built a quiet career around sound, not music exactly, but the science of it. I worked as an audio engineer for a medical technology company in Portland, designing sensors, acoustic mapping systems, and navigation tools for people whose eyes could not be trusted. Most people heard noise. I heard structure. The low hum of a refrigerator could tell me when the compressor was failing. The echo in a hallway could tell me where the walls narrowed. A footstep could tell me more about a person's mood than their face ever could. Madison used to say that was what made me different. She said I listened like other men looked. Back then, she meant it as a compliment. We met at a charity fundraiser near the Pearl District on a Thursday night in October, the kind of evening where rain turned the sidewalks black and every restaurant window glowed gold against the dark. She was 30, Sharp, beautiful, and impossible to ignore, with blonde hair pinned back neatly and a white coat draped over one arm like she had stepped out of a magazine. She sold high-end real estate, the kind with rooftop decks, wine rooms, and views of Mount Hood on clear days. I was there because my company had donated equipment to a children's rehabilitation clinic. She was there because wealthy donors often became wealthy clients. Somehow, we ended up beside the same coffee urn, both pretending the hotel coffee did not taste burned. She laughed when I said it sounded better than it tasted. That was the first thing she liked about me, I think. I did not try to impress her. I did not name drop, did not brag, did not act like the men circling her in tailored suits. I just talked to her. 6 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, we bought a modest craftsman house on a quiet street in southeast Portland, with a maple tree out front and a garage I slowly turned into a workshop. Those first years were simple in the way good things are simple before people start measuring them. Saturday mornings were coffee on the porch. Sunday afternoons were grocery runs, laundry, and me fixing whatever Madison decided looked old enough to replace. She would bring clients through glass towers downtown, while I spent 10 hours in a lab wearing headphones and studying waveforms on a monitor. At night, we came home to the same kitchen light, the same bills, the same bed, the same belief that building a life did not have to look glamorous to matter. But Madison's world kept getting shinier. Mine stayed. Practical. Her commissions grew. Her circle changed. Dinners moved from neighborhood restaurants to private clubs where valet tickets cost more than I used to spend on lunch in a week. She learned to laugh at jokes I did not understand and smile at men who looked through me like furniture. Little by little, the things she once admired became the things she apologized for. My steady job became boring. My old truck became embarrassing. My quietness became weakness. She stopped saying I listened differently. She started saying I never knew how to take up space. I told myself marriage had seasons. I told myself love could survive a little distance. What I did not know was that Madison had already started imagining a life where I was not standing beside her at all. The night everything changed started with a sound that did not belong. Not thunder, not tires on wet pavement, not the steady slap of rain against the windshield. It was a soft electronic chime from my passenger seat, the alert tone from my prototype unit, the one I had spent 18 months building in secret after regular hours at Northbridge Medical Systems. I was driving south on Interstate 5, 10 miles from home, with downtown Portland fading behind me in silver streaks of rain. The clock on the dashboard read 10:43 in the evening. Madison had texted earlier that she would be at a client dinner near Lake Oswego and not to wait up. That had become normal. Too normal. I should have been thinking about that, about her late nights, about Tyler Grant showing up too often in conversations that did not need his name. Instead, I was thinking about the device blinking beside me. The prototype was called Echo Point, though the company still referred to it by a dry project number that sounded like a printer model. It used small bursts of sound and reflected signals to map nearby obstacles for blind and visually impaired users. To most people, it looked like a black plastic box with a sensor strip and a clipped-on microphone. To me, it was 3 years of questions finally starting to answer back. That evening, during a late test run in the lab, Echo Point had done something strange. It had identified motion at an angle it should not have been able to read. Not a glitch. Not exactly. More like a doorway opening inside the math. If I could prove it, the entire project would jump forward by years. I remember smiling alone in the lab, exhausted, hungry, and proud in that quiet way men get when nobody is watching. I called Madison first. She did not answer. I left a message, probably too excited, telling her I had found something big, something that could change the future of the company. Then I called my project lead. Then I packed the prototype into its padded case and headed home through the rain. Looking back, I think that was the moment the clock started counting down. At 10:51, my phone rang through the truck speakers. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the call connected automatically because my hands were on the wheel. For 2 seconds, there was only static. Then a breath. Then Madison's voice, faint and distant, like she was not speaking into the phone, but standing near someone who was. If he files the update tonight, you are out of time, she said. My chest tightened. I said her name once. No answer. Another voice came through, lower, controlled, familiar enough to turn my blood cold. Tyler. Then make sure he does not get there first. he said. The call cut off. The highway hummed beneath me. Rain blurred the lanes into long white scars. I told myself I had misunderstood. I told myself the audio had crossed lines, some strange pocket dial, some business conversation twisted by static and fear. Then headlights filled my rearview mirror. An SUV had come up fast behind me, too close for that weather, its beams glaring white through the rain. I moved right. It moved right. I slowed. It slowed. My hands tightened on the wheel. Echo Point chimed again from the passenger seat, its sensor catching movement before my eyes could make sense of it. A warning tone rose, sharp and steady. The last thing I remember clearly was not impact or pain. It was sound. Tires hissing on wet asphalt. The prototype beeping faster. My own voice saying, "Madison, what did you do?" Then the world folded into darkness, and when I woke up, daylight was gone forever. The first thing Madison did after leaving the hospital was erase me from the life we had built. She did not do it with one dramatic announcement. She did it in quiet, practical steps, the kind that leave paper trails and cold rooms behind. 2 days after she walked out of room 417, my mother called the nurse's station because Madison had not answered her phone. I could hear Mom's voice through the receiver when the nurse held it near my ear, thin and frightened, trying to stay strong because mothers think their sons can hear fear even through walls. "Ethan, honey, Madison said you needed rest," she told me. She said visitors might confuse you. Confuse me. That was the word Madison chose. Not injured. Not recovering. Confuse. It landed heavier than any diagnosis. By the end of that week, Madison had told our neighbors I was unstable after the crash. She told my coworkers I would be away indefinitely and should not be contacted directly. She told the bank she needed emergency access because I was incapacitated. Every sentence sounded responsible from the outside. Every sentence moved me 1 inch closer to being treated like a man who had disappeared before he was even gone. I learned most of it from fragments. Nurses speaking softly near the door. My mother crying in the hallway when she thought I was asleep. A hospital administrator asking whether my spouse had power of attorney. That question cut through the medication haze like a blade of ice. I said no. The room went still. The administrator cleared his throat and said Madison had submitted documents requesting temporary authority over household and financial decisions. My mouth tasted like metal. "Do not approve anything without my signature," I said. My voice was weak, but the words were not. That was the first time since the accident I felt a small piece of myself come back. Madison had mistaken blindness for absence. She thought because I could not see the forms, I would not understand what they were. She thought because I was lying under blankets with bandages over my eyes, the world would lower its voice and move around me. But sound has edges. Lies have rhythm. I could hear when people were hiding something. I could hear hesitation before a name. I could hear paper being folded too carefully. On the 5th day, my brother Aaron drove up from Bend and walked into my room smelling like cold air, coffee, and highway miles. He did not ask if I was all right. We were not that kind of family. He just took my hand, held it once, and said, "Tell me what you need." I told him to go to the house. He went quiet. When he came back that evening, his boots stopped 3 feet inside the door, and I knew before he spoke. Madison had cleared out the primary bedroom, taken the framed photos from the hallway, removed the safe from my office, and left the kitchen table covered with envelopes. Medical bills, insurance notices, a printed separation agreement, and one handwritten note. Aaron did not want to read it. I made him. His voice shook with anger as he said the words Madison had left behind. "You should be grateful I stayed this long." I turned my face toward the window I could not see. Somewhere beyond it, rain tapped the glass in soft, patient fingers. I did not cry. Not then. Something colder had taken the place of grief. For 12 years, I had believed love meant standing beside someone when life turned ugly. Madison believed love ended when the lighting got bad. She did not just leave me. She tried to make sure the world saw me the way she did. Broken, helpless, finished. But in that hospital bed, with my eyes covered and my marriage reduced to paper, I made one decision that steadied my breathing. I would not beg her to come back. I would not chase the woman who abandoned me in the dark. I would learn the shape of that darkness. Then I would learn how to move through it. Rehabilitation did not feel like recovery at first. It felt like being asked to become a stranger inside my own body. 2 weeks after the accident, They moved me from the hospital to a vision rehabilitation center on the west side of Portland, a low brick building with wide hallways, soft carpet, and windows I could feel only as warmth on my face. My room smelled like clean sheets and lemon disinfectant. The nurses were kind. That almost made it worse. Kindness has a way of showing you exactly how far you have fallen. On the first morning, a mobility instructor placed a white cane in my hand and told me we were going to walk 20 feet down the hall. 20 feet. Before the crash, I could drive across the state in the rain, repair a broken amplifier by touch, and map a room by the way sound returned from the walls. Now 20 feet felt like crossing a frozen lake. My palm tightened around the cane until my knuckles ached. I hated the sound it made at first, that light tap against baseboards and door frames, announcing to everyone that Ethan Walker had become someone people needed to make space for. Dr. Claire Bennett did not let me drown in that feeling. She was not warm in the soft way. She was warm like a porch light in winter, steady, practical, impossible to argue with. She had gray eyes, a calm voice, and the patience of someone who had watched hundreds of people confuse loss with an ending. Your eyes are injured, she told me during our first session. Your brain is not. Your ears are not. Your hands are not. Stop holding a funeral for the parts of you that are still alive. I wanted to hate her for that. Instead, I remembered it. Every day became a small war fought without noise. I learned to count steps from my bed to the bathroom. I learned the difference between the hollow echo of an open doorway and the flat silence of a wall. I learned that carpet swallowed sound while tile threw it back hard. I learned to pour coffee by listening to the rising pitch inside the mug. I burned my fingers twice. I spilled it 3 times. On the 4th try, I got it right, and for reasons I still cannot explain, that almost broke me. Not because it was coffee, because it was proof. The world had not ended. It had only changed languages. At night, when the center went quiet, I recorded voice notes on my phone. At first, they were for memory, medication times, therapy instructions, names of staff. Then they became something else. A place to put the anger without letting it poison me. I spoke Madison's note out loud once, just once, and then deleted it. I recorded what I remembered from the highway instead. The unknown call. Her voice through the static. Tyler's voice behind it. The SUV lights in the mirror. The warning tone from Echo Point. I listened back again and again, not because I wanted to suffer, but because sound had always been my work, and somewhere inside that broken chain of seconds, there was a truth I had not fully heard yet. Aaron brought my damaged belongings from the truck in a cardboard box. Wallet, keys, cracked glasses, my watch, dead and scratched. The prototype case, dented but intact. When my fingers touched the rough black plastic of Echo Point, something moved through me that was not grief. It was purpose. Madison thought darkness had made me useless. She had no idea darkness was turning me into the one man who could finish what I started. The first real breakthrough did not come from a doctor. It came from a dead watch. Aaron had tossed it into the cardboard box with the rest of my damaged things because he thought I might want to keep it, some small proof that I had survived the crash. It was a black smartwatch Madison had bought me for Christmas 2 years earlier, back when she still knew how to choose gifts that sounded like love. The screen was cracked across the middle. The band smelled faintly of rain and motor oil from the truck. For 3 days, it sat on the desk beside my bed at the rehabilitation center, silent as a stone. Then one night, after everyone else had gone quiet, I ran my thumb along the broken edge and felt the smallest vibration. Not dead. Sleeping. I asked Aaron to bring me a charger the next morning. He plugged it in without saying much, because by then he understood that questions made me feel smaller. 15 minutes later, the watch buzzed against the table. That tiny sound went through me like a match striking in a dark room. With Dr. Bennett's help, I connected it to my phone. Most of the screen was unreadable, but the voice assistant still worked, and buried in the emergency health data was an audio file recorded during the crash. The watch had triggered automatically when it detected the sudden change in motion. 64 seconds. That was all. 64 seconds between the last ordinary moment of my life and the black. While that followed, I listened once, then again with headphones. At first, it was chaos. Rain, road noise, my breathing, Echo Point's warning tone from the passenger seat. But underneath it, barely there, was the call. Madison's voice, thin behind static. Tyler's lower voice answering. I did not have every word, not yet, but but I had enough to know my memory had not invented it. If he files the update tonight, her voice vanished under a burst of distortion. Then Tyler, make sure he does not get there first. My skin went cold from the inside out. Dr. Bennett sat beside me in silence, and for the first time since I had met her, she did not correct my breathing or tell me to relax. She just said, "Ethan, you need a lawyer." I called Daniel Reed that afternoon. Daniel and I had gone to Oregon State together before life sent us into different kinds of rooms. He became the kind of attorney who read contracts like crime scenes. I became the kind of engineer who trusted systems more than people. When I told him what happened, he did not interrupt. When I played the recording, he asked me to play it again. His voice changed after that. Not louder, sharper. "Do not send this to anyone else," he said. "Do not confront Madison. Do not contact Tyler. From now on, we document." That word steadied me. Document. Not rage. Not revenge. Evidence. Daniel requested company access logs from Northbridge Medical Systems. Aaron recovered a cloud backup from my laptop. My project lead, Martin Shaw, confirmed that someone had attempted to access the Echo Point update folder 40 minutes after my crash using Madison's home network. Madison did not work for Northbridge. Tyler did not either. Yet there they were, shadows on a digital wall. And then Daniel found the cleanest cut of all. 3 days before the crash, Madison had emailed a private investor about transitioning control of an acoustic mobility patent if I became medically unable to continue development. She had not waited for tragedy. She had prepared for it. I sat in my room with the headphones in my ears, listening to the watch recording until the sounds separated like threads. Rain. Tires. Chime. Her voice. His. Voice. My voice. The truth had been there the whole time, trapped in damaged glass and broken circuits. Madison thought I could not see her anymore. She forgot that my entire life had been built on listening. By the time I left the rehabilitation center, winter had settled over Portland like wet concrete. The maple tree in front of my house had dropped every leaf, and when Aaron helped me up the porch steps, I could hear them gathered in damp piles along the walkway, soft under his boots. I had been gone 6 weeks, long enough for Madison to empty drawers, forward mail, and turn our home into a place that sounded unfamiliar. Houses have voices. Ours used to hum with small things. The refrigerator clicking on at midnight, Madison's keys landing in the blue ceramic bowl by the door, the heating vent ticking in the hallway, my own tools shifting in the garage when the wind pressed against the side door. Now the room sounded hollow. Too much space. Too little life. Aaron wanted me to sell it. Mom wanted me to move in with her for a while. Daniel wanted me to stay somewhere Madison could not walk into without notice. I understood all of them. I stayed anyway. Not because the house still felt like mine, but because I refused to let her turn every familiar thing into a crime scene. Dr. Bennett came twice a week for home mobility sessions. She made me map the kitchen by touch, count the steps from the bedroom to the stairs, label the microwave buttons with raised markers, and stop apologizing every time I bumped into a chair. "You are not broken furniture," she said one afternoon after I cursed under my breath. "You are adapting." That word became my anchor. Adapting. I started working from the garage because the company lab still felt too far away, too loud, too full of people who knew the story but not the truth. Northbridge placed me on medical leave, then consulting status, then quietly tried to move Echo Point under a different department. Daniel stopped that before the ink dried. The original patent filings had my name, my design notes, my test data, my years of unpaid evening work woven through every line. Madison had counted on confusion. She had counted on doctors, lawyers, and executives speaking over me while I sat in the dark. But Daniel made sure every room learned I was still present. I worked differently now. Slower at first. My laptop read code aloud through a screen reader while Echo Point sat on the workbench, clicking, chirping, measuring the garage around me in pulses I could feel through my fingertips. The first version had been designed by a sighted man imagining blindness. The new version was built by a blind man who knew the terror of a hallway changing without warning. I changed the tones. Softer for open space. Warmer for doorways. A low pulse for obstacles at knee height, because the world is full of things that punish you for not seeing them. I tested it in the kitchen, in the driveway, along the sidewalk while Oregon rain tapped the hood of my jacket. Every successful step put one brick back under my feet. Then Dr. Bennett introduced me to a veterans mobility clinic in Vancouver, Washington. They agreed to let a small group test Echo Point under supervision. The first tester was a retired Marine named Harold Price who had lost most of his vision to disease, a white-haired man with a handshake like oak and a laugh that filled the room. He wore the device for 12 minutes, walked an unfamiliar hallway, stopped before a half-open supply cart, turned to me, and said, "Whoever built this has been scared in the dark." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Good. Then he built it right." That sentence did more for me than any sympathy ever had. Within 3 months, the clinic data reached a medical technology fund in Seattle. Then came calls, meetings, evaluation reports, and words people used when they smelled money but wanted to sound noble, scalable, transformative, life-changing. I listened to all of it with my cane folded beside my chair and Daniel at my right hand. By spring, Echo Point had a new company structure, independent from Northbridge, protected by contracts Madison could not touch. The press called me the engineer who taught machines how to see. I hated the headline at first. Then I stood alone in my garage one rainy evening, listening to Echo Point map the room I had rebuilt my life inside, and realized they had it backward. The machine had not learned to see. I had learned that sight was never the only way to know where you were going. The launch was scheduled for a Friday afternoon in May, inside a glass conference hall overlooking the Willamette River. By then, Portland had started pretending winter had never happened. Sunlight broke through the clouds in clean strips, flashing across the water, warming the sidewalks, making every window look more expensive than it was. I stood backstage with Echo Point clipped to my jacket, my cane folded in my left hand, and a dozen voices moving around me like weather. Investors, reporters, clinic directors, engineers from Northbridge who had once spoken about my project like it was a department asset and now spoke about it like they had believed in me all along. Daniel stood to my right, quiet as stone, one hand resting on a folder thick enough to change several lives. Dr. Bennett adjusted the small microphone near my collar and asked if I was breathing. I said yes. She said, "Try doing it more than once." I almost smiled. 6 months earlier, I could not walk 20 feet down a hallway without feeling like the walls were waiting to punish me. Now there were 200 people on the other side of a black curtain waiting to hear me explain how darkness had become architecture. The surgery had happened 3 weeks before the launch. Not a miracle. I had learned to distrust that word. The doctors were careful, honest, cautious. My right eye remained mostly shadow and light, but my left had recovered enough to give me shapes, color, movement. Pieces of the world returned in broken glass. The first thing I saw clearly was not a face. It was rain sliding down my kitchen window. I stood there for 10 minutes, watching water gather, bend, and fall, feeling grateful and angry at the same time. Sight had come back incomplete, but truth had never needed perfect vision. That afternoon, as the event staff counted down, Daniel leaned close and said, "She is here." I did not ask who. My body knew before my mouth did. Sound changed around Madison. It always had. Men straightened their posture. Women lowered their voices. Rooms made room for her. I turned my head slightly and caught the shape of her through the narrow gap in the curtain. Blonde hair pinned back. White dress. Pearl earrings. The same careful elegance that used to make strangers think I was lucky. For 1 second, some old part of me tried to recognize my wife. Then she moved, and I saw Tyler Grant behind her near the side wall. Thinner than I remembered, jaw tight, eyes restless, wearing a navy suit that looked borrowed from a better version of himself. Madison believed I still lived in total darkness. I knew that because she stepped toward the stage with the confidence of a woman performing for a man she thought could not read the room. When my name was announced, applause rose like rain on a metal roof. I walked out slowly, not because I needed drama, but because I had earned every step. Echo Point pulsed softly against my chest, mapping the podium, the edge of the stage, the front row. Madison sat there with tears already prepared in her eyes. Cameras turned toward me. I spoke about the clinic trials, about Harold Price, about the first time the device helped a man cross an unfamiliar hallway without reaching for a wall. I spoke about fear without dressing it up. I spoke about independence without selling it like a slogan. Then, during the question period, Madison stood. The room softened around her before she said a word. She pressed one hand to her chest and let her voice tremble just enough. "Ethan, I know this is your day," she said, "but I want everyone to know how proud I am of you. I never stopped believing you would find your way back." A few people murmured. One camera swung toward her. She stepped closer, playing the faithful wife returning from heartbreak, and for a moment I heard the hospital door again. Her heels on tile. Tyler outside the room. "He is finished anyway." I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Then I looked directly at her, with the little vision I had, and watched her face change when she realized I was looking back. Not through her. At her. "Madison," I said calmly, "before you rewrite the story in front of these people, you should know something." Daniel opened the folder. Beside me. The room went quiet. "I learned how to live without sight," I said, "but I never learned how to live with lies." Daniel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He stepped beside the podium, placed the folder on the glass surface, and looked across the room with the calm of a man who had spent his life watching lies panic under fluorescent lights. "What you are about to hear," he said, "has already been preserved, authenticated, and submitted through proper legal channels." Madison's face went still. Not pale yet. Still. Like a photograph taken 1 second before the fall. Tyler shifted near the side wall. An echo point caught the movement with a low pulse against my chest. I heard him before I saw him, his polished shoes scraping the floor as he looked for an exit without wanting anyone to notice. Daniel nodded to the technician. The speakers clicked once. Then the room filled with rain. Not music. Not a video. Just rain, road noise, and the thin electronic warning tone from the prototype on the night my life changed. My own breathing came through next, uneven but clear. Then Madison's voice emerged from the static. "If he files the update tonight, you are out of time." A ripple moved through the audience. Phones lowered. Cameras steadied. The recording continued. Tyler's voice followed, controlled and unmistakable. "Then make sure he does not get there first." Madison whispered something I had not been able to hear the first 100 times because grief had been louder than memory. In that hall, through cleaned audio, it landed with perfect cruelty. "Once he is declared unable to manage the project, we can move the patent before Northbridge locks it down." I watched her eyes flick toward Tyler. There it was. Not sorrow. Not shame. Calculation collapsing into fear. Daniel did not play more than he needed to. He moved to the next file. Company access logs, investor emails, the power of attorney request, the attempt to transfer control, the message where Madison described me as functionally finished. No dramatic shouting followed. Real consequences rarely sound like thunder. They sound like paper sliding across a table. Daniel announced that civil claims had been filed for fraud, attempted conversion of intellectual property, and financial misconduct connected to my medical crisis. Northbridge had already opened its own internal investigation. The private investor had withdrawn. Tyler's consulting agreement had been terminated that morning. As for Madison, the separation agreement she had left on my kitchen table was now evidence in a case she never imagined I would be able to build. She took one step toward me. "Ethan," she said, and for the first time in months, my name sounded like something she needed. I held up one hand. Not angry, not shaking, just finished in a way she had never understood. "Do not," I said. That single word stopped her harder than any speech could have. The woman who once filled every silence suddenly had nothing to place inside this one. Security did not drag anyone out. There was no scene worth giving her. Tyler left first, head down, moving fast but trying to look casual. Madison stayed a few seconds longer, staring at me as if she could still find the man who used to explain away her coldness because love was easier than truth. But that man had been left in room 417. The man on the stage had learned the map of darkness by heart. After she walked out, the room remained silent. Then Harold Price stood from the second row. His cane tapped once against the floor. Then again. He began clapping, slow and solid, and one by one the room joined him until the sound rose around me like weather breaking open. I did not smile for the cameras. I did not look toward the door. I looked down at Echo Point resting against my chest, still pulsing softly, still telling me where the edges were. Months later, the divorce was finalized. I kept the house, the company, the patent, and the quiet life I had rebuilt one step at a time. Madison lost the version of the future she tried to steal. I never celebrated that. I had learned the difference between justice and joy. Some evenings, when rain comes down over Portland and the kitchen window turns silver, I stand there with one hand on the counter and listen. The refrigerator hums. The maple tree brushes the porch. The city moves beyond the glass. My sight is not perfect, but my life is mine. She thought darkness would hide the truth from me. She never understood that darkness taught me how to hear it clearly.